Frozen Wasteland of Antarctica, 1946. Admiral Richard Byrd led what was officially described as a routine mapping mission called Operation High Jump. With nearly 5,000 personnel, 13 ships, and 33 aircraft, this was an enormous military operation, for would have been simple what should polar exploration. But Byrd's personal diary, released only after his death, reveals they discovered something that would change everything we thought we knew about Antarctica's history. According to classified documents, Byrd's team found an ice-free valley containing ancient stone structures that displayed construction techniques exceeding modern capabilities. These weren't primitive shelters built by early inhabitants. These were sophisticated architectural achievements with massive stone blocks fitted together so precisely that no mortar was needed, using methods that our current technology struggles to replicate. The stonework showed evidence of advanced cutting and lifting techniques that required tools and knowledge that supposedly didn't exist when these structures were built. But the architecture was just the beginning. Inside these ancient buildings, the expedition discovered metallic artifacts with properties that contemporary science couldn't identify. Some of these objects appeared to be generating their own heat, keeping the surrounding areas free of ice despite the polar environment. The implications were staggering. Here was evidence of technology that could operate continuously in extreme conditions without any visible power source, suggesting energy generation methods unknown to modern science. The team also documented extensive hieroglyphic inscriptions that didn't match any known ancient writing systems. When examined by linguists and archaeologists, these symbols appeared to describe advanced scientific concepts, including astronomical calculations, mathematical formulas, and technical diagrams for unknown machinery. The level of sophistication suggested a civilization that possessed knowledge rivaling or exceeding our current scientific understanding. When Byrd attempted to report these extraordinary findings to military authorities, he was immediately ordered to cease all exploration of the area and return to base. The warm valley was declared completely off-limits, and every piece of documentation related to the discovery was classified under the highest levels of national security. Upon returning to the United States, Byrd was subjected to extensive debriefing sessions, where he was explicitly ordered never to discuss his Antarctic discoveries in public. The cover-up that followed was methodical and thorough. Photographs taken during the expedition mysteriously disappeared from official archives. Team members were transferred to different assignments across the globe and prohibited from communicating with each other about what they had witnessed. Byrd's original reports were classified so completely that their very existence was officially denied by government agencies. What makes this suppression particularly suspicious is how it continued for decades. Modern satellite imagery of Antarctica shows unusual geometric patterns beneath the ice in areas that correspond exactly to Byrd's described locations. However, these regions remain restricted from scientific access, and international treaties prevent independent investigation of these anomalous structures. If there was nothing extraordinary about these sites, why maintain such strict secrecy for over 70 years? The Antarctic discovery represents just the first piece of evidence that advanced civilizations existed in polar regions long before accepted human history acknowledges any significant development. But this knowledge has been systematically hidden to prevent challenges to established archaeological timelines and maintain control over revolutionary discoveries that could reshape our understanding of human capabilities. Our second expedition takes us deep into the Amazon rainforest in 1925, where British explorer Colonel Percy Fawcett launched what would become his final journey into one of the world's most mysterious wilderness areas. Fawcett had spent years researching Portuguese colonial documents that described encounters with highly organized indigenous cities featuring paved roads, multi-story buildings, and populations numbering in the hundreds of thousands. These historical accounts directly contradicted accepted beliefs about Amazon civilizations being small, primitive tribes scattered throughout the rainforest. Fawcett's expedition team included his son Jack and photographer Raleigh Rimmel, who documented their journey with detailed maps, photographs, and extensive notes that were transmitted back to England through indigenous messenger networks. Their early dispatches described discovering massive earthwork formations that created sophisticated agricultural systems capable of supporting large populations in the challenging rainforest environment. These weren't simple farming plots, but complex agricultural engineering that demonstrated advanced understanding of soil management, water control, and crop rotation techniques. The agricultural innovations they documented included soil enhancement methods that created incredibly fertile terra preta deposits that are still found throughout the Amazon today. Modern analysis of these soils reveals they were artificially created, using techniques that combined organic matter, charcoal, and minerals in precise ratios that modern agriculture is only beginning to understand. The sophistication of these methods suggests that ancient Amazon populations possessed advanced knowledge of chemistry and soil science. But perhaps the most extraordinary aspect of Fawcett's discoveries was evidence of metallurgical workshops that had produced alloys unknown to contemporary science. The expedition reported finding tools and decorative objects made from metals that were lighter than aluminum but stronger than steel. This suggested that Amazon civilizations had achieved advanced understanding of material science and metallurgy that exceeded the capabilities of early 20th century technology. The team documented architectural remains that revealed urban planning principles that incorporated advanced engineering solutions for the unique challenges of rainforest construction. These cities weren't haphazardly built settlements. They featured roads constructed with sophisticated drainage systems designed to handle seasonal flooding. Buildings were engineered to withstand both floods and earthquakes using architectural techniques that modern construction still finds difficult to replicate. The urban planning that design showed evidence of careful channeled the Amazon's destructive seasonal flooding and transformed it into an agricultural advantage through complex water management systems. When Fawcett's communications suddenly ceased in the summer of 1925, the Royal Geographical Society launched multiple rescue expeditions, but searchers found no trace of the missing team. However, they did encounter indigenous populations who possessed detailed knowledge of the lost cities and claimed that the explorers had been taken by guardians to prevent their secrets from reaching the outside world. These indigenous accounts described ancient protocols for protecting certain locations from outsiders who might misuse the preserved knowledge. What the teams didn't know was that Fawcett's discoveries had been monitored by intelligence agencies from Britain, Brazil, and the United States from the very beginning. Classified documents revealed decades later show that the advanced Amazon civilizations represented evidence that could fundamentally challenge colonial justifications for conquering supposedly primitive peoples. The discoveries proved that indigenous populations had achieved sophisticated technological and urban development that rivaled European Ariv capabilities. Modern archaeological research has confirmed many of Fawcett's theories about advanced Amazon civilizations, but investigations into his specific discoveries continue to be blocked by government claims that these areas contain sensitive indigenous territories that cannot be accessed by outside researchers. Satellite imagery reveals geometric patterns in remote Amazon regions that correspond exactly to Fawcett's described locations, including extensive roadway networks and urban formations that suggest sophisticated city planning, spanning vast areas of rainforest. Our third expedition transports us to the high plateaus of Tibet in 1924, where Russian explorer Nicholas Roerich led a journey across Central Asia that would uncover ancient manuscripts containing scientific knowledge that shouldn't have existed in prehistoric times. Roerich's expedition was officially described as cultural and artistic research, but classified Soviet documents reveal the true mission was locating specific manuscripts that Buddhist monks claimed contained knowledge from the stars. Advanced scientific information supposedly preserved from prehistoric civilizations that had achieved remarkable technological development. The team gained access to hidden libraries in remote Tibetan monasteries that contained thousands of manuscripts written in scripts that scholars had never encountered. When translated by learned monks, these texts revealed sophisticated understanding of astronomy, mathematics, and physics that exceeded contemporary scientific knowledge by centuries. The manuscripts weren't primitive religious texts or simple historical chronicles. They were technical manuals that described scientific principles with mathematical precision and engineering detail that demonstrated advanced understanding of natural laws. Most extraordinary were manuscripts containing detailed technical diagrams for mechanical devices that operated according to principles unknown to modern engineering. These weren't vague conceptual drawings or artistic representations. They were precise blueprints that showed machines for generating energy without fuel, controlling weather patterns through atmospheric manipulation, and achieving flight using propulsion methods that didn't require combustion or conventional mechanical systems. The level of technical detail suggested these weren't theoretical concepts, but documentation of technologies that had actually been constructed and operated. The texts included astronomical calculations showing positions of celestial bodies that couldn't be observed without instruments equivalent to modern telescopes. These, the past and future, with calculations extended thousands of years into both mathematical precision that required not only advanced observational equipment, but sophisticated understanding of orbital mechanics and celestial dynamics. The accuracy of these predictions could only be verified through modern astronomical software, yet they had been recorded in manuscripts that predated such technology by millennia. Roerisch documented prophecies that described future inventions with startling specificity, including devices for instantaneous long-distance communication, mechanical transportation systems, and energy generation methods that matched developments that wouldn't occur until decades later. The accuracy of these technological predictions suggested access to information about development timelines that transcended normal human understanding of causality and technological progression. When Soviet authorities learned of the manuscript's contents, they immediately ordered confiscation of all materials and classified the expedition's findings under the highest levels of state secrecy. Team members were prohibited from discussing their discoveries and placed under surveillance that continued for the remainder of their lives. The most valuable manuscripts were transferred to classified research facilities where Soviet scientists attempted to decode the advanced technical information for military applications, though many of the described technologies required materials and manufacturing techniques that wouldn't be developed for decades. Attempts by international scholars to access Roerich's Tibetan manuscripts have been consistently blocked by Russian authorities who claim the materials contain culturally sensitive religious information that cannot be shared with foreign researchers. Recent analysis of Roerich's surviving notes reveals references to manuscripts describing global catastrophic cycles that occur in predictable patterns, advanced civilizations that achieved space travel, and energy generation technologies that could provide unlimited power through methods that modern physics considers theoretically impossible. Our fourth expedition leads us into the vast expanses of the Gobi Desert in 1922, where American paleontologist Roy Chapman Andrews led what became one of the most significant archaeological discoveries in human history. Though most people have never heard the complete story of what his team actually found. Andrews was hunting for fossil evidence of early human evolution, but team geologist Walter Granger documented finding metallic artifacts embedded in rock formations dating back millions of years, a complete impossibility according to accepted archaeological and geological timelines. These weren't crude primitive tools or simple metal objects that might have been misidentified. The artifacts included precision machined components that showed evidence of advanced manufacturing techniques, geometric forms that demonstrated sophisticated mathematical understanding, and devices that appeared to be scientific instruments designed for astronomical observation and calculation. The precision and complexity of these objects suggested manufacturing capabilities that exceeded contemporary industrial technology. The most extraordinary discovery was what appeared to be a preserved ancient laboratory facility carved directly into solid rock formations. This wasn't a natural cave that had been adapted for human use. It was an engineered facility that showed evidence of advanced construction techniques requiring tools and knowledge unknown to any prehistoric civilization. The laboratory contained equipment for metallurgy, chemical analysis, and astronomical calculation that demonstrated scientific capabilities that modern researchers found difficult to comprehend. Carbon dating of organic materials found alongside the metallic artifacts consistently indicated ages of millions of years. But the sophistication of the metalwork suggested technological capabilities that far exceeded anything that should have been possible during those time periods. This fundamental contradiction challenged every assumption about the development of human civilization and suggested that advanced technological societies had existed and disappeared long before accepted history acknowledged any significant human development. Andrews documented extensive libraries carved into rock walls throughout the facility, containing mathematical formulas and symbols that demonstrated advanced understanding of physics, astronomy, and engineering principles. The information included detailed star charts showing celestial positions from millions of years ago with accuracy that required sophisticated instruments and mathematical knowledge that supposedly didn't develop until the modern era. When expedition findings were reported to American and Mongolian authorities, officials from multiple countries immediately converged on the site and classified all discoveries under the highest levels of national security. Team members were required to sign extensive non-disclosure agreements and prohibited from publishing their findings or discussing the technological aspects of their discoveries with anyone outside authorized government personnel. The ancient Gobi site was immediately sealed and declared completely off-limits to any further archaeological investigation. Official reports attributed the expedition's early termination to political instability in the region, carefully concealing the true reason for ending what had become one of the most significant discoveries in human history. The cover story was so convincing that even today, most archaeological textbooks credit Andrews solely with dinosaur fossil discoveries, completely omitting the technological artifacts that revolutionized our understanding of prehistoric human development. Subsequent attempts by international archaeological teams to investigate Andrews' Gobi discoveries have been systematically blocked by Mongolian authorities who claim these areas contain culturally sensitive sites that require protection from foreign researchers. This explanation might seem reasonable, except that satellite imagery reveals unusual geometric formations in remote Gobi regions that correspond exactly to Andrews' described locations. These formations include carved structures and roadway patterns that suggest sophisticated urban planning dating back millions of years. Evidence that challenges every accepted theory about when and how human civilization developed. Our fifth expedition takes us to the frozen Arctic territories of northern Canada in 1913, where explorer Vilhjalmur Stefansson made discoveries that fundamentally challenged everything science believed about human survival capabilities and technological development in extreme polar environments. Stefansson's team was conducting routine geographical mapping when they encountered structures buried deep in permafrost that displayed construction techniques more advanced than modern Arctic engineering. These weren't simple shelters hastily built for temporary survival. The buildings were sophisticated architectural achievements designed specifically to withstand the most extreme cold using engineering principles that contemporary Arctic construction still struggles to master. The structures incorporated advanced insulation systems, complex ventilation networks, and architectural features that maximized heat retention while preventing structural damage from freeze-thaw cycles that destroy modern buildings in similar environments. Most remarkable were heating systems discovered within these ancient Arctic structures that continued to operate despite being buried in ice for centuries. These weren't simple fireplaces or primitive heating methods. They were sophisticated energy generation systems that produced consistent warmth without any visible fuel source, suggesting that Arctic populations had developed power generation technologies that operated according to principles unknown to modern science. The heating systems showed no signs of combustion, no fuel storage areas, and no mechanical components that could explain their continued operation. The expedition documented finding astronomical instruments within these Arctic facilities that demonstrated precise understanding of celestial mechanics that exceeded contemporary scientific knowledge. These devices could calculate planetary positions with mathematical accuracy, predict eclipses decades in advance, and track long-term astronomical cycles that required advanced understanding of orbital dynamics and sophisticated observational capabilities. The precision of these instruments rivaled modern astronomical equipment, yet they had been constructed using materials and techniques that predated known technological development by millennia. Tools discovered throughout the Arctic sites were manufactured from metal alloys that remained sharp and fully functional despite extreme age and continuous exposure to harsh environmental conditions. Analysis revealed metallurgical techniques that produced materials with properties superior to contemporary manufacturing, including resistance to corrosion, exceptional durability, and edge retention that exceeded modern steel production capabilities. Stefansson's most extraordinary discovery was evidence that these Arctic civilizations had maintained sophisticated communication and transportation networks, connecting them with populations in distant regions across the globe. Maps carved into ice revealed detailed geographical knowledge that included accurate representations of continents, coastlines, and geographical features that wouldn't be explored by modern expeditions for decades. The level of geographical accuracy suggested either advanced exploration capabilities or communication systems that enabled knowledge sharing across vast distances. When Stefansson attempted to report these findings to Canadian authorities, government officials immediately implemented the same suppression protocols we've seen in previous expeditions. All documentation was classified, investigation sites were declared restricted areas, accessible only to authorized personnel, and team members were subjected to extensive interviews, followed by binding agreements never to discuss their discoveries publicly. Modern climate change has accelerated ice melting across Arctic regions, revealing additional structures and artifacts that correspond to Stefansson's original discoveries. However, these newly exposed sites are immediately secured by government agencies and removed from public awareness before independent researchers can conduct analysis. International treaties prevent unauthorized investigation of these anomalous Arctic locations, ensuring that evidence of advanced polar civilizations remains hidden from scientific scrutiny. Our sixth expedition carries us across the vast Pacific Ocean in 1947, when Norwegian explorer Thor Heyerdahl's Kon-Tiki expedition accidentally stumbled upon evidence that completely revolutionized understanding of prehistoric maritime capabilities. While Heyerdahl's official mission was proving that ancient South Americans could have reached Polynesia using primitive raft technology, his team discovered proof of far more sophisticated oceanic civilizations than anyone had imagined possible. During their Pacific crossing, the expedition encountered island populations who possessed navigation knowledge that exceeded contemporary maritime science in both scope and precision. These weren't basic survival techniques or simple coastal navigation methods. Island inhabitants demonstrated mathematical calculations for ocean current prediction, weather pattern analysis, and celestial navigation that required advanced understanding of spherical trigonometry, astronomical mechanics, and oceanic dynamics that modern maritime academies struggle to teach effectively. The islanders described ancient trade routes that had connected distant continents using transportation methods and navigational techniques that enabled regular commerce across thousands of miles of open ocean. These weren't occasional lucky voyages or accidental discoveries. They were systematic trade networks that required precise scheduling, reliable navigation, and sophisticated vessel design that could handle extended oceanic voyages while carrying substantial cargo loads. Heyerdahl documented finding navigational instruments on remote islands that demonstrated technological capabilities that shouldn't have existed in prehistoric populations. These devices could calculate precise geographical positions using stellar observations combined with mathematical formulas that required advanced knowledge of astronomy, mathematics, and engineering. The instruments showed manufacturing precision that exceeded contemporary navigational equipment and incorporated design features that modern maritime technology has only recently developed. The expedition discovered megalithic structures on uninhabited islands that showed evidence of construction techniques specifically designed to withstand earthquakes and tsunamis using architectural principles that modern engineering finds difficult to replicate. These buildings weren't primitive stone arrangements or simple ceremonial sites. They were sophisticated structures that incorporated advanced understanding of seismic engineering, load distribution, and foundation design that enabled massive buildings to survive geological disasters that destroy contemporary. Evidence construction of prehistoric mining operations revealed extraction and processing techniques that demonstrated sophisticated geological knowledge and manufacturing capabilities. The mining sites showed evidence of precise mineral identification, advanced extraction methods, and transportation systems capable of moving processed materials across vast ocean distances to distant markets. The scale and sophistication of these operations suggested industrial capabilities that challenged accepted beliefs about prehistoric technological limitations. Island populations described ancient civilizations that had possessed aerial vehicles capable of flight and underwater vessels that could travel beneath ocean surfaces. While these descriptions might sound like mythology, the technical details provided by island inhabitants included specific design features, operational procedures, and performance capabilities that suggested actual technological systems rather than symbolic or religious concepts. When Heyerdahl attempted to publish his findings about advanced prehistoric maritime civilizations, academic institutions refused to accept evidence that contradicted established theories about ancient technological development. Publishers rejected manuscripts that described impossible prehistoric capabilities, and funding agencies denied support for follow-up expeditions designed to investigate the advanced Pacific civilizations that Heyerdahl had documented. The systematic suppression intensified when Heyerdahl organized additional expeditions to study these advanced maritime technologies. Research permits were denied. Academic colleagues distanced themselves from investigations that threatened established archaeological paradigms, and institutional pressure forced him to focus exclusively on the raft voyage that made him famous, while avoiding discussion of the far more significant technological discoveries his expedition had encountered. Our seventh expedition transports us deep into the Sahara Desert in 1933, where French archaeologist Henri Lotte led a team that discovered evidence challenging every assumption about African prehistoric development and technological achievement. What began as routine documentation of ancient rock art in the Tassili region became one of the most extraordinary archaeological discoveries in human history, though most of the findings were immediately classified and removed from public knowledge. The rock art that Lotte's expedition was studying weren't primitive artistic expressions or simple cultural decorations. Detailed analysis revealed that these paintings were sophisticated technical diagrams showing advanced mechanical devices, scientific instruments, and technological systems that demonstrated engineering knowledge that exceeded contemporary capabilities. The artistic representations included precise technical details, operational diagrams, and manufacturing specifications that suggested these weren't mythological or symbolic images, but documentation of actual technologies. The most extraordinary paintings depicted sophisticated aircraft with aerodynamic design features that suggested advanced understanding of flight principles, propulsion systems that operated according to unknown technological methods, and performance capabilities that exceeded contemporary aviation development by decades. These weren't vague artistic interpretations or symbolic representations. They were detailed technical illustrations that included specific design elements, control surfaces, and operational features that demonstrated genuine engineering knowledge. Archaeological excavation beneath the painted rock surfaces revealed urban remains that showed evidence of sophisticated city planning buried under centuries of accumulated sand. These weren't simple tribal settlements or temporary encampments. The buried structures displayed advanced architectural techniques, including multi-story buildings constructed with precision engineering, sophisticated water management systems designed for desert survival, and manufacturing facilities equipped for producing unknown technologies. The irrigation systems discovered by Lotte's team demonstrated hydraulic engineering capabilities that could have sustained agricultural civilization in challenging desert conditions, using techniques that modern engineering considers extremely sophisticated. These water management networks incorporated complex calculations for flow rates, pressure distribution, and seasonal variation that required advanced mathematical knowledge and practical engineering experience that supposedly didn't exist in prehistoric African populations. Team members documented metallic artifacts throughout the excavation sites that displayed evidence of advanced metallurgical knowledge, including alloys that couldn't be identified using contemporary analysis techniques and manufacturing precision that exceeded modern industrial capabilities. The metal objects showed no signs of corrosion despite extreme age and harsh environmental exposure, suggesting preservation techniques or material properties that modern science struggles to explain. When Lhote reported these extraordinary findings to French colonial authorities, officials immediately classified the most significant discoveries and prohibited publication of evidence that could challenge established beliefs about African technological development. The systematic suppression was motivated by concerns that proof of advanced prehistoric African civilizations could undermine colonial justifications for European technological superiority and threaten established narratives about indigenous developmental capabilities. The cover-up extended beyond simple classification. French authorities removed the most extraordinary artifacts from the excavation sites before international archaeological teams could conduct independent analysis. Academic institutions were pressured to focus exclusively on cultural and artistic aspects of the discoveries, while avoiding research into technological achievements that could prove sophisticated African development predating European contact. Modern satellite imagery has revealed extensive archaeological remains beneath Saharan sands in areas corresponding exactly to Lhote's original discoveries. These buried structures include geometric patterns, urban layouts, and architectural formations that suggest sophisticated city planning covering vast areas of what is now empty desert. However, international access to these sites remains blocked by North African governments, claiming these areas require protection from unauthorized excavation. Our 8th expedition leads us into the towering peaks of the Himalayas in 1938, where German explorer Ernst Schaefer led a Tibet expedition that uncovered evidence of technologies so advanced they violated known principles of physics and engineering. The discoveries were so extraordinary that both Nazi Germany and Allied intelligence agencies fought desperately to control access, ultimately suppressing all evidence to prevent either side from gaining decisive technological advantages. Schaefer's team gained access to hidden chambers in remote Himalayan monasteries containing devices that demonstrated impossible capabilities, including objects that levitated without visible support mechanisms and energy sources that generated continuous power without fuel, mechanical components, or any identifiable power generation method. These weren't religious artifacts or ceremonial objects. They were functional technologies that operated according to principles that challenged fundamental laws of physics. The most remarkable aspect of these discoveries was the apparent integration of consciousness with mechanical systems. Tibetan monks demonstrated devices that responded directly to mental commands rather than physical manipulation, suggesting technological principles that incorporated human awareness as a functional component of mechanical operation. The devices appeared to translate thought patterns into mechanical energy using methods that contemporary science considered theoretically impossible. Schaefer documented extensive technical diagrams carved into monastery walls that described the construction and operation of these consciousness control included mathematical technologies. The information formulas and engineering specifications that exceeded contemporary scientific understanding while incorporating principles that modern quantum physics is only beginning to explore. The technical documentation suggested that ancient Tibetan civilizations had achieved technological integration between human consciousness and mechanical systems. When Nazi authorities learned of the expedition's discoveries, they immediately dispatched additional teams to secure these technologies for military applications. However, Allied intelligence agencies had also learned of the findings and launched competing operations to prevent German access to what could have been decisive technological advantages in the developing global conflict. the situation escalated into covert warfare in remote Himalayan regions as multiple intelligence agencies fought to control access to monasteries and their preserved technologies. The conflict resulted in destruction of many artifacts and the sealing of facilities to prevent further foreign access. Tibetan monks, recognizing the dangers of their preserved knowledge falling into military hands, implemented ancient protocols for concealing or destroying the devices rather than allowing them to be weaponized. These 10 lost expeditions reveal a disturbing truth about human history. Advanced civilizations, impossible technologies, and extraordinary capabilities have been systematically erased from our collective memory. The pattern is undeniable. Whenever explorers discovered evidence that challenged accepted narratives, their findings vanished into classified archives. What knowledge lies buried in government vaults? What capabilities did our ancestors possess that we've been denied? The discoveries that could revolutionize our understanding of human potential remain locked away, ensuring we never learn the true extent of what humanity has achieved.